Welcome to the Trend Reddit channel. This is where we share interesting, funny, and emotional stories about family life together. In a shocking decision, a millionaire sent his beloved daughter, who had always lived in luxury, to live on a remote farm as a punishment. But when he decided to pay her a visit, what awaited him? Will this change help her realize the true value of life, or will it only make things worse? Let's laugh, reflect, and sometimes shed tears with these meaningful stories. If you love touching and relatable stories, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any of our videos. Be sure to click the notification bell to get the latest updates on our new story episodes. Thank you for your support and for being with Trend Reddit. Sophia Roberts stirred awake in her opulent penthouse, a glittering tower of luxury high above the city. The morning sun filtered through the silk curtains, casting a warm glow on the marble floors and designer furniture. Everything around her spoke of wealth: custom-tailored gowns hanging in a walk-in closet, priceless art adorning the walls, and a private elevator that whisked her to exclusive events at a moment's notice. Yet, as she lay there, staring at the ornate chandelier above her bed, Sophia felt a deep emptiness gnawing at her insides. At 23 years old, Sophia had everything the world told her she should want: the luxury cars, the extravagant vacations, and the envy of everyone in her social circle. But none of it filled the void left by years of emotional neglect. Her father, Alexander Roberts, a powerful business magnate, had built an empire from the ground up. His name was synonymous with success, but his heart had grown cold over the years, distant and unreachable, buried under the weight of his responsibilities. In her father's world, money solved everything, even the absence of love. Sophia's mother, Margaret, had passed away when she was just a child, or so she had been told. The loss had been a defining moment in Sophia's life, a void no material possession could ever hope to fill. Growing up, she remembered hearing stories of her mother's kindness, how Margaret was the heart and soul of their family before she was gone. The constant absence of her father and the loss of her mother shaped her early years, leaving her surrounded by nannies, private tutors, and extravagant gifts, but devoid of genuine human connection. As Sophia rose from her bed and padded across the cold marble floor, her mind drifted to her father. Alexander had spent more time closing international deals than he had ever spent raising her. Despite being the heiress to his vast fortune, Sophia rarely saw him, and their conversations were often limited to brief, formal exchanges during obligatory family functions. He was a man who lived for his work, not his daughter, and his empire had grown as large as the distance between them. Sophia stared at her reflection in the mirror: long, blonde hair perfectly styled, emerald eyes that sparkled with youthful beauty, and a flawless complexion that countless spa treatments maintained. On the surface, she was the picture of perfection, but beneath it all was a deep longing for something real, something she could never seem to find in her gilded world. Her father's absence wasn't the only loss Sophia had endured. Her social life, while packed with glamorous events and influential people, was little more than a facade. The friends who surrounded her, including her closest companion, Charlotte, were more interested in her wealth than in who she really was. They shared in her opulent lifestyle but offered little in terms of meaningful connection. It was a lonely existence, one that weighed heavily on Sophia, especially now, as she stood at a crossroads in her life. Despite all her material comforts, she couldn't shake the feeling that something essential was missing. She wanted more than shallow relationships and empty wealth. She wanted to feel truly seen, truly loved. Her penthouse, once a symbol of achievement and status, had started to feel more like a gilded cage. She thought back to her childhood, when her mother had still been alive, and their family had spent summers at a remote ranch far away from the city. It had been a simpler time, full of open fields, warm sun, and the comforting embrace of her mother's love. Sophia hadn't been back to the ranch in years, not since her mother's passing, but the memory of it lingered, a faint glimmer of happiness in an otherwise lonely life. For a long moment, Sophia stared out of the window at the sprawling city below, the skyscrapers towering over everything, just like her father. Yet even his vast influence couldn't fill the emotional emptiness that had defined her life. Her thoughts drifted to her mother, to the time they spent together before she passed. That loss had shaped her, leaving her to navigate the complexities of wealth and power alone. Her father's world had consumed everything, including the love and warmth that had once made their family whole. Sophia knew she needed a change, something to break free from the superficiality of her existence. And so, as she turned away from the city skyline, Sophia made a decision. She would plan a grand birthday party, one last indulgent event before seeking a path of her own. It would be a distraction, something to momentarily numb the hollow ache inside her. Her best friend Charlotte would help organize it, a celebration of wealth and status to prove, if only to herself, that she was still in control. But deep down, Sophia felt the stirrings of something new, something that would soon set her on a course that neither her wealth nor her father's empire could shield her from. Unbeknownst to her, the life she thought she knew was about to unravel. The carefully constructed world of privilege she had inherited would soon be challenged, and Sophia would be forced to confront not only the betrayals of those closest to her but also the secrets of her family's past. For now, though, she was still trapped in the illusion of her life, unaware of the truth that lay just beneath the surface. The truth that would change everything. Sophia had meticulously planned every detail of her birthday party. The extravagant event was set to take place at an exclusive venue, with a guest list filled with the most powerful names in the city. She and her best friend Charlotte had spent hours deliberating over the decorations, catering, and entertainment, ensuring that it would be a night to remember. Sophia, determined to distract herself from the growing emptiness inside, threw herself into the party preparations as if this celebration could somehow fill the void. Charlotte had always been there, her confidant and closest companion since childhood. She was the kind of friend who knew how to navigate Sophia's world of privilege. They shared everything, from their deepest secrets to the latest fashion trends, and Charlotte had never hesitated to support Sophia in all her extravagant endeavors. The party was as much Charlotte's event as it was Sophia's, and they spent countless hours laughing, joking, and planning the night's grandest spectacle. On the evening of the party, as guests began to arrive in their finest attire, the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. The grand ballroom was adorned with glittering chandeliers, and every detail, from the flowers to the fine wines, screamed luxury. For a moment, Sophia allowed herself to forget her loneliness, immersing herself in the lively conversations and the extravagant show she had created. But in the midst of the celebration, something unexpected happened. As she walked toward the bar to get a drink, her eyes casually glanced at Charlotte's phone, which had been carelessly left on the table. A message notification blinked on the screen. Sophia wouldn't have given it a second thought, except the message was from an unfamiliar number and its content made her freeze. The message read, "Everything is in place for tomorrow. She won't suspect a thing. Soon, it will all be ours." Sophia's heart pounded in her chest. She picked up the phone, her fingers trembling as she quickly scrolled through more messages. What she uncovered sent shockwaves through her. Charlotte, her best friend, her confidant, had been plotting with someone to steal her fortune. The messages detailed a plan to manipulate Sophia's assets, a betrayal so cold that it left her breathless. In that moment, surrounded by people celebrating her life and wealth, Sophia felt utterly alone. The trust she had placed in Charlotte shattered like glass. Everything she thought she knew about their friendship dissolved before her eyes. The words on the screen blurred as her emotions surged: anger, hurt, disbelief. How could Charlotte, of all people, betray her like this? They had shared everything, or at least Sophia had thought they had. The realization that her friend had been using her all along was a devastating blow, and it sent Sophia reeling. Unable to confront Charlotte then and there, Sophia quickly placed the phone back on the table and stepped away from the crowd. She moved through the sea of guests, her mind racing. The walls of the ballroom seemed to close in around her, the laughter and chatter now a distant hum. She had been living in a bubble of wealth and excess, surrounded by people who seemed to care for her but who, in reality, only wanted what she had. The betrayal cut deep, leaving her questioning everything. Sophia found herself in a quiet corner of the venue, trying to steady her breathing. She thought about her life, the choices she had made, and the people she had allowed into her inner circle. Her friendships, like her father's wealth, had always seemed so secure, so impenetrable. But now, in the harsh light of reality, she saw how fragile it all truly was. Her entire world had been built on illusions, and the one person she thought she could trust had been plotting against her all along. The thought of confronting Charlotte was too overwhelming, especially in the middle of the party. Instead, Sophia stayed in the shadows, watching as her so-called best friend laughed and socialized with their guests, unaware that her deceit had been uncovered. Every smile from Charlotte now felt like a knife to Sophia's heart. As the party continued without her, Sophia's mind spun with questions. Who was Charlotte's accomplice? How long had this plan been in motion? And what was she going to do now? The betrayal was so complete, so unexpected, that Sophia struggled to process it all. By the time the last of the guests had left, Sophia was no closer to finding the answers she needed. She knew, however, that her life could no longer continue as it had. This betrayal had exposed the hollowness of her relationships and the precariousness of her wealth. Everything felt tainted, corrupted by the realization that even the people closest to her could not be trusted. The betrayal forced Sophia to confront a truth she had long been avoiding. Her life, with all its luxury and status, was built on fragile foundations. Her friendships, like her wealth, were not real. They could disappear in an instant, and all she would be left with was the emptiness she had been trying so hard to ignore. As the party venue emptied and silence replaced the earlier festivities, Sophia sat alone in the grand hall, her mind racing. She knew she couldn't stay in this world any longer, not without losing herself completely. The betrayal had opened her eyes to the superficiality of her existence, and now she had to decide what to do next. In that moment, Sophia resolved to leave it all behind. The penthouse, the parties, the false friendships, none of it mattered anymore. She needed to get away, to find something real, something that couldn't be taken from her. And as she sat there, she remembered the ranch. The decision to leave the city and retreat to her family's old ranch was a sudden one. The morning after her birthday party, Sophia packed a few essentials into a single suitcase and left her penthouse without a word to anyone. She hadn't informed her father or Charlotte, nor had she even fully processed what her next steps would be. All she knew was that the life she had been living no longer felt like her own, and she needed to escape from the world of betrayal and excess. The journey to the ranch took several hours, but it felt like a lifetime away from the opulence she was used to. As the scenery shifted from tall skyscrapers to rolling hills and open fields, Sophia felt her mind begin to clear. The weight of her recent discovery about Charlotte's betrayal was still heavy, but with each passing mile, it felt a little more bearable. When she finally arrived at the ranch, the sight of it was both comforting and strange. The sprawling fields, the weathered wooden house, and the quiet atmosphere contrasted starkly with the city's constant noise. She hadn't been back since she was a child, but the memories of her mother and simpler days rushed back to her. If you find it interesting, please like it. If not, please comment number 1. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. Miguel, the ranch manager who had worked for her family for years, greeted her at the gate. His face lit up with surprise when he saw her, though his kind eyes were quick to mask any shock. Miguel's wife, Carmen, appeared moments later, wrapping Sophia in a warm embrace that felt far more genuine than any greeting she had received at her party the night before. "We're so happy to have you here," Carmen said, her voice gentle. "It's been a long time." Sophia smiled, feeling an unexpected sense of peace wash over her. For the first time in what seemed like forever, she felt welcome in a way that wasn't based on wealth or status. Miguel and Carmen led her inside the house, where she was shown to a modest room, nothing like the lavish spaces she was used to. Still, the simplicity of it soothed her. She unpacked her belongings, taking in the rustic surroundings that were so different from the polished, lifeless decor of her penthouse. The first few days at the ranch were a blur of adjustment. Sophia was unaccustomed to the physical demands of life on the farm. She had never had to work with her hands or wake up before dawn, but Miguel and Carmen were patient, guiding her through the daily tasks. It was hard at first, her muscles ached, and she struggled to keep up, but the work offered a strange sense of purpose, something she hadn't felt in a long time. She quickly became acquainted with the small group of workers who helped manage the ranch. Among them was Lucia, a young woman not much older than Sophia, who had lived and worked on the ranch for several years. Lucia was tough and capable, everything Sophia felt she wasn't. But there was no judgment in Lucia's eyes, only understanding. They quickly formed a bond, one that wasn't based on wealth or appearance, but on shared experience and the desire to find something real. Sophia spent her days learning how to care for the animals, mend fences, and tend to the crops. At first, she was out of her element, her manicured hands used to manual labor, her body protesting the hard work. But slowly, she began to appreciate the simplicity of the tasks. There was something honest about the work, something that felt real in a way that her previous life never had. Lucia became a friend and a guide. They spent their breaks together, talking about their lives and their dreams. Lucia shared stories of her own struggles, her desire to eventually own a small piece of land herself, and how the ranch had become her sanctuary. For the first time, Sophia felt she could open up about her own insecurities, her sense of betrayal, and her need to escape the superficiality of her former life. The connection between them grew naturally, unburdened by the false expectations that had once governed her friendships in the city. As the weeks passed, Sophia found herself growing more accustomed to the rhythms of life on the ranch. She learned to enjoy the quiet moments at dawn, the smell of freshly turned earth, and the satisfaction that came from completing a hard day's work. Her hands, once soft and manicured, became calloused, but she didn't mind. It was a badge of honor, a symbol of her transformation. Yet, even as she immersed herself in this new life, there was a lingering sense of unfinished business. The betrayal by Charlotte still haunted her thoughts, as did the looming presence of her father. Alexander had not called or tried to contact her since she left the city. It was as if her disappearance didn't matter to him, which only confirmed what she had always suspected: her father cared more about his business than about her. But something else tugged at her mind as well. There was an unspoken secret at the ranch, something she couldn't quite place. Miguel and Carmen were kind, but there was a guardedness in their eyes whenever they spoke about the past. Lucia had hinted at it once, mentioning something about Margaret, her mother, that didn't align with what Sophia had been told. The ranch held memories that Sophia had yet to uncover, and she could sense that those memories were tied to her mother. In time, Sophia knew she would have to confront these lingering questions, about her family, her past, and the truth that had been kept from her for so long. But for now, she allowed herself to settle into the simplicity of life at the ranch, embracing the peace it brought, even as the shadows of her past began to stir once more. Sophia had begun to feel more at peace at the ranch, but the quiet comfort of her new life was shattered one afternoon when she stumbled upon an old journal in the attic of the ranch house. The journal had her mother Margaret's name on it. Sophia's heart raced as she began flipping through the pages, unable to stop herself from reading. The entries revealed details about Margaret's life that Sophia had never known. In the journal, Margaret wrote about her strained relationship with Alexander, Sophia's father. She spoke of arguments about how they should raise Sophia, about her desire for a simpler life and Alexander's obsession with his growing empire. The more Sophia read, the more she realized that her mother had been deeply unhappy living the life her father had forced upon her. But then, as she neared the end of the journal, Sophia's hands trembled. One entry, dated just days before Margaret's supposed death, described how Margaret planned to leave the city to live at the ranch permanently. She wrote about how she couldn't bear to raise Sophia in a world driven by greed and power. Margaret had no intention of staying in Alexander's world. Sophia's mother hadn't wanted to disappear from her life, she had wanted to take Sophia with her and start over at the ranch. The discovery shook Sophia to her core. The journal ended abruptly, leaving many questions unanswered. But it was enough to ignite a fire in Sophia. Her mother hadn't died, at least not in the way she had always been told. The story she had believed her whole life had been a lie, carefully constructed by her father. Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she realized the truth: her mother had fled, but she hadn't left the ranch. She had been hiding here all along. Determined to uncover the full truth, Sophia confronted Miguel and Carmen. She showed them the journal, her voice shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. "Is it true?" she demanded, her eyes blazing with intensity. "Did my mother fake her death? Has she been here all this time?" Miguel and Carmen exchanged a long look before Miguel nodded, his expression somber. "Yes, Sophia," he said softly. "Your mother didn't die. She came here, to the ranch, after she and your father had a final argument. She couldn't live the life you wanted for her or for you. So, she left everything behind. She's been here, hiding, ever since." The revelation hit Sophia like a tidal wave. Her mother was alive. The mother she had mourned, the woman whose absence had shaped her entire life, had been here, right under her nose, for all these years. Sophia felt a surge of conflicting emotions, relief, anger, betrayal, and above all, a desperate need to see her mother again. "Where is she?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Miguel hesitated, but finally, he gestured toward a small, secluded cottage at the far end of the ranch. "She's been living there, away from everyone. She wanted to protect you from the truth." Without another word, Sophia rushed out of the house, her heart pounding as she made her way toward the cottage. The path seemed to stretch on forever, each step filled with anticipation and fear. When she reached the cottage, she stood frozen for a moment, staring at the door, unsure if she had the strength to face what was on the other side. Taking a deep breath, Sophia pushed open the door. Inside, standing in the middle of the small, rustic room, was Margaret. Her mother. Older, yes, but unmistakably the woman Sophia remembered from her childhood. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them crackled with years of unspoken words and unanswered questions. Finally, Margaret broke the silence. "Sophia," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You found me." Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she took a hesitant step forward. "You've been here all this time," she said, her voice trembling. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe you were dead?" Margaret's eyes were filled with sorrow as she stepped toward her daughter. "I thought I was protecting you," she said softly. "I didn't want you to be caught in the middle of your father's world and mine. I wanted to take you with me, but it was too complicated. Your father, he made it impossible." The weight of the years of lies and secrets pressed down on Sophia. "He knew, didn't he?" she asked, anger rising in her chest. "He knew you were alive and kept it from me. He let me believe you were gone." Margaret nodded, her face lined with regret. "He thought it was for the best. He didn't want to lose control of you, of your future. He wanted you to take over his empire. I didn't agree with him, but I didn't want to drag you through our fight." Sophia's mind reeled. Her father had lied to her for years, had kept her mother from her. The anger she had felt toward him for his emotional distance now morphed into something far deeper, a sense of betrayal that cut to the core. "I need to confront him," Sophia said, her voice steady, despite the storm of emotions swirling inside her. "He has to answer for this." Margaret placed a gentle hand on her daughter's arm. "Sophia, be careful. Your father, he's not used to being challenged. But you deserve the truth. Just know that he believed he was doing what he thought was right." Sophia nodded, but her resolve was firm. She couldn't let this lie stand. It was time to confront her father and demand the truth about the life he had stolen from her, from both of them. The confrontation with Alexander was inevitable, and Sophia wasted no time in returning to the city. She called her father, demanding a meeting at their family estate. Alexander's voice, cold and detached as always, betrayed no emotion as he agreed. Sophia had spent the entire drive rehearsing what she would say, but nothing could have prepared her for the flood of emotions she felt when she stepped into the grand study where her father sat, looking over business documents as if nothing had changed. "Why did you do it?" Sophia's voice cut through the silence, sharp and filled with accusation. She stood at the doorway, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Why did you let me believe my mother was dead? Why did you keep her from me? Alexander looked up slowly, his expression unreadable. He placed his papers down, leaning back in his chair as he studied his daughter. I did what I thought was necessary, he said, his tone calm, measured. Your mother made her choice. She left us, Sophia. She chose her life at that ranch over you, over everything we built. That's not true, Sophia shot back, her voice trembling with anger. She wanted to take me with her, but you stopped her. You kept me from her because you wanted control over me, over my life. You let me live in this lie. Alexander's jaw tightened, and for the first time, his composure seemed to crack. I did what I had to do to protect you, he said, standing up from his chair and crossing the room toward her. Your mother wanted to take you away from everything I built for you, your future, your legacy. She was selfish, thinking only of herself. She wasn't selfish. Sophia snapped, her voice rising. She wanted me to have a life that wasn't just about power and money. She wanted me to have a real family, something you've never understood. For a moment, Alexander was silent, his eyes locked on his daughter's. Then, with a sigh, he turned away, his shoulders sagging slightly as if the weight of the years had finally caught up with him. I didn't want to lose you, he said quietly. Your mother and I, we had different ideas of what was best for you. I thought I could give you a life of security, a future where you could take over everything I've worked for. Sophia shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. You didn't care about what was best for me, she whispered. You cared about your empire. You cared about control. And now, because of that, you've lost me anyway. Alexander turned back to face her, his expression unreadable once again. What do you want from me, Sophia? He asked, his voice low. What do you want me to do now? Sophia took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had come here for answers, for closure, but now she realized she wanted more than that. She wanted change, not just for herself, but for the legacy her father had built, for the people her family's wealth had touched. I want the truth, she said firmly. I want you to acknowledge what you did. You kept my mother from me, and you built an empire on lies and greed. If you want any chance of repairing this, of repairing us, you need to make things right. Alexander's eyes narrowed slightly, but he nodded, as if weighing her words. And how do you suggest I do that? Sophia didn't hesitate. First, you need to come clean publicly. Tell the truth about my mother and what you did. And then, I want you to use your wealth for something good, something real. Donate part of the family fortune to charity, invest in the ranch, and give back to the people who actually work for us. This can't just be about power and money anymore. For a long moment, Alexander said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. I'll do it, he said quietly. But know this, Sophia, it won't be easy. The world I've built, it won't go away overnight. But if this is what you need, if this is the only way to make things right between us, then I'll do it. Sophia felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was tempered by the knowledge that their relationship would never be the same. Too much had been broken, too many lies had been told. Still, it was a start. I'll hold you to that, she said softly, turning to leave. But just before she reached the door, she paused and glanced back at her father. I hope you can find some peace in this, too. Alexander didn't respond, but Sophia saw the flicker of something, regret, perhaps, or understanding, in his eyes before she walked out of the room. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. True to his word, Alexander made a public statement, admitting to the years of deception and lies about Margaret's disappearance. The media was abuzz with the story, but Sophia stayed away from the spotlight, focusing instead on her time at the ranch. The ranch, now a sanctuary for both Sophia and Margaret, became a symbol of healing. Alexander visited from time to time, slowly beginning to understand the value of the simple life he had once dismissed. He started making changes in his business practices, cutting ties with corrupt partners and redirecting funds to charitable causes. It was a slow process, but it was a step toward redemption. For Sophia, the ranch was no longer just a place of escape, it was home. She spent her days working with Miguel, Carmen, and Lucia, planning the future of the ranch as both a working farm and an educational center. It was her way of giving back, of using her family's wealth for something meaningful. The past would never be fully erased, but as Sophia stood on the porch of the ranch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her family was healing, and she was finally beginning to find herself again. In the months that followed, the transformation of both Sophia and her family became more evident. The ranch had evolved into more than just a retreat for Sophia. It had become a symbol of renewal for her, her mother, and, surprisingly, her father as well. The quiet simplicity of ranch life brought a peace that none of them had experienced before. Margaret, once hidden away, was now an integral part of the ranch's daily operations, her strength and wisdom guiding not only Sophia but also the community of workers who called the ranch home. Sophia had always been the one to live a life of luxury and excess, but her time on the ranch had grounded her in ways she hadn't expected. She no longer felt the pull of the city's glitz and glamour. Instead, she found solace in the hard work and the connection to the land. The ranch was now a place where she could build something meaningful, far removed from the hollow world of wealth she had once inhabited. With Margaret by her side, Sophia threw herself into the new project she had envisioned. Together, they began laying the groundwork for the foundation that Sophia had long dreamed of establishing. The foundation's mission was clear: to help privileged youth like Sophia reconnect with the value of hard work, empathy, and community. The ranch itself would serve as the foundation's heart, an educational center where young people could come and learn about life beyond their insulated worlds. Sophia spent hours planning the future of the ranch, working closely with Miguel, Carmen, and Lucia. The bonds she had formed with them grew stronger with each passing day, and they had become her true friends, people who cared for her without expectation or ulterior motives. Lucia, in particular, had become a close confidant. The two young women shared their hopes and dreams, and together, they envisioned a ranch that could serve as both a sanctuary and a place of learning. As the foundation took shape, Alexander's presence at the ranch became more frequent. At first, his visits were awkward, his attempts at reconnection strained. But over time, the distance between him and Sophia began to close. He still struggled with his own guilt over the years of lies and neglect, but Sophia saw glimpses of change in him. He started spending more time talking to the workers, learning about their lives and appreciating the work they did. For a man who had once been obsessed with power and control, the ranch offered him a new perspective, one that challenged the values he had once held so dearly. Sophia noticed that her father's transformation wasn't just about business or public image. He had begun to reconnect with what truly mattered: family. Margaret, despite everything, had found it in her heart to forgive Alexander. Their relationship would never return to what it once was, but there was an understanding between them now, an acceptance of the past that allowed them to move forward. They often spent quiet evenings together on the porch of the ranch house, talking about the years they had lost and the future they hoped to build for their daughter. For Sophia, seeing her parents together like that brought a sense of closure. The broken family she had known all her life was slowly mending. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was more than she had ever hoped for. The foundation officially launched at the end of the summer, with an inaugural event held at the ranch. It was a modest gathering, attended by a small group of influential people from the city, along with the workers and locals who had become part of Sophia's new world. Alexander made a speech, acknowledging the mistakes of the past and expressing his commitment to supporting his daughter's vision for the future. His words were sincere, and for the first time, Sophia believed that her father had truly changed. The event was a success, and soon after, the ranch welcomed its first group of students, privileged young people who were eager to learn about a life far removed from their sheltered upbringing. Sophia worked closely with them, guiding them through the daily tasks of ranch life and teaching them the values of hard work and responsibility. It was fulfilling in a way she had never expected, and it gave her a sense of purpose that went far beyond anything she had ever felt in her previous life of luxury. Sophia's relationship with her father continued to improve as well. They began to share more open conversations, discussing not just business or superficial matters, but their lives, their regrets, and their hopes for the future. Alexander spent more time at the ranch, and as he became more involved with the foundation, Sophia could see the pride in his eyes when he spoke of her accomplishments. It was a pride that wasn't based on her wealth or status, but on the person she had become. As the months passed, the ranch flourished. The foundation grew, welcoming more students and expanding its reach beyond the city. Sophia felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she was helping others find the same peace and clarity that she had discovered at the ranch. Her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined, and for the first time, she felt truly at home, not just at the ranch, but within herself. One evening, as the sun set over the rolling hills, Sophia stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. Margaret and Alexander sat together nearby, their quiet conversation a backdrop to the peaceful scene. Lucia and the other workers were finishing up their tasks for the day, their laughter carrying on the breeze. For the first time in years, Sophia felt a deep sense of contentment. She had found her place, not in the world of wealth and excess she had once known, but in the simplicity and honesty of the ranch. Her family was healing, her future was clear, and she was at peace with who she had become. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.